So the recording's underway now, and I guess that's right. That's right. Okay. And I've got y'all written down already for being in here. So that's where it is. I'm on my way back to North Georgia at this point. I'm in southern Kentucky, getting close to Bowling Green. And so I should be back later today to Northwest Georgia. Um, I had my ball joints on the front of my car. One of them wore out on me, so I ended up having to spend 2 nights up there in actually Brooks, Kentucky, right by Russellville, which is close to Louisville. Um, I had to get it aligned this morning after I replaced them yesterday. I still got to get it worked on a little more when I get back because it needs a little bit more stuff to it. I'm not sure what it is. Well, for one thing, the guy said my brakes are worn, and I know my tires are worn, so it may be those two things. So I'm continuing down the road. Let me get back where I can see the chat again. Okay, so I can see that. So that's progressing. I did get on every day since I've been gone into classes, answered email, actually done some grading. I have not graded what y'all turned in for last week yet. But in some classes I did get some grading already done. I should be on campus in the morning and be on campus every day the rest of the week, as far as I know. And so I'll be there doing that. In chapter 9, you're jumping into a different subject here. And depending on what your major is, you may well be taking what's in this chapter a lot deeper. You probably had, if you took CIST 1001, which I think all of our students do in all of the degree and diploma programs in CIST, you should have had a little bit of introduction to database. That's what this chapter is about, is actually about database. As they're going through and showing you how it's organized in the database approach. So they're going through on that and giving an introduction to it. If you take CIST 1220, which is SQL, you'll take this to a deeper level and have a much deeper level and understanding on it. Also, the Access course, which I can't remember the number of right off the top of my head, where we've got a Word course, Excel course, PowerPoint and email course, and an Access course. And I can't think those numbers right at the moment. That would take you into more depth on this also and teach you the basics on it. Although the SQL one's really going to be the one that really does that. And for some of you, you will take that. Some of you may have taken it already. I'm not sure. But what you're going through is learning about databases, which is a way to organize your data out there. And instead of it just being in a file system, if you're taking it now, you have Mr. Cantrell for it, if that helps you any. But you're going through and learning how to do all the different SQL commands and doing select statements and all of that stuff. And that, and like in chapter 2, you actually learned about where they talk about normalizing and everything else in there. I teach it spring semester, so that's why I can tell y'all on this what that course is pretty well on. The Access course I don't teach, so I really can't give you much information on that one. But if you want to learn SQL, you definitely want to take the SQL course for 1220, not the Access course. Microsoft will claim they're using SQL in Access, but it's not real SQL. The other programs out there that use SQL, like SQL Server, that I have students use, MySQL, I think Mr. Cantrell has students use, and Thanks for making a post right then, Lauren, because now I know you're in here. And I hadn't caught that you had come in. Because I'm on the phone, so that's why it's looking a little weird as y'all look at me also. Um, Let me see if I missed anyone else. But I think that's everybody. Yes, okay. Because if I have the chat window open, that's all I see. Um, it can be. It can be tricky on some of it. I know when I teach it, I have a lot of notes out there for the students on it. So it just depends. But in there, what you're doing is having a way to organize the data out there. So you keep it in tables in there, and you split the data up into where it's got relations, and you put related data in a table, and you put another table that's got other stuff in it, and so on. So like our student record system at the school, um, it actually uses a database. It uses a huge database. It puts student information, your name, your address, that type stuff, and your social security number and student number in one table. It has another table that has all the grades you have made, which has the course number and the grade. You have another table that tells us what course number, what the courses are. So it has the course number, it has the course name, it has the number of hours, and that type of information, description of it all in there. Then you have another table that has instructor information. So there it has my social security number, my student number, because actually I do have a student number, a 900 number. Um, don't ask me what it is. I'd have to pull my ID card to tell you what it is because I never use. There's one or two little things we only use it about once a year for the instructors. That and actually my employee number, which the state assigns to me, which I do know because every week I have to type in my hours for how many hours I worked every week. They're changing that this week. Um, and then you have another table that has the schedule for the college in it. And it just has course number, the CRN number, and what the times and days that it's taught on and who's teaching it. And actually, it should be just the teacher's number should be in there. Now, these are all connected and related. Notice we haven't duplicated information. Then you have another table that actually says current registration. And it tells us what the quarter is and what student number is, what class they're registered in by the CRN number. And there's another table that fits into that one. And then by linking all of those together, you can find all the information that we get out of there without duplicating anything except for student numbers, course number, and instructor number. Everything else is only in there once. So suppose one of you moves. Then all we have to do is go in and change your address in one spot. They're in the student information one, and not all over the place multiple times. And it's changed, and everywhere we're accessing and printing out reports that have your address on or whatever, or just displaying information on the screen, which is more common. It all pulls from that one single spot. So it was a simple change, and we got it changed everywhere. Without using a database, you'd have to go in and change it numerous places, and you're liable to miss one. Or a name changes. And people do change names for various reasons. Obviously, the most common is got married or got divorced, but otherwise, there's people also change names because it really does happen out there for other reasons. Sometimes, actually, the names in there are wrong. I've seen a student's name misspelled, pointed it out to them, and they went, "Yep, it's misspelled," and I told them who to go see at the registrar's office to get it fixed. That's the idea of what databases do. Normalization says we set up all these tables. Well, when you first set them up, you're actually going to end up with lots of duplicated information because you're going to put things in as you create as you are creating each table, you end up putting things in multiple places. You're going, well, I need the student name here in the table that has what their courses and grades are. No, you really don't. But when you're setting it up, that's what you would do. So then in normalization, you go back through, compare all the tables, and look at what's all in there and go, wait a minute, we've got student name in this table, this table, this table, and this table. Can we do some combining, reducing, and just use a linkage across on it, not have to have student name repeated multiple times? But the student number will be repeated multiple times because that will be our index or our key back to in the student table to get the details about students. Likewise, course number. It will be repeated numerous times, but course names only repeat it once. Student names only repeat it once. So that's first normalization. Second normalization gets some more smoothing out of it. Third normalization gets it where it's entirely no repetitive information and keys are all built all correctly and everything else. Um, your biggest concern in here will be just being aware of that normalization is getting the data in a more efficient manner. Um, Even in the SQL course, you got taught about what first degree normalization is, second degree normalization, and third um, degree normalization, but they didn't have you do it, but they showed you what was involved in more detail in here. Um, so beyond that, they also tell you about as you're designing these, how do you want to design the stuff um, as you're developing it all out there. So the entity relationship diagrams are what you're going to use in that normalization process as you show how they all relate together. Now, have I made some sense on all of that? And maybe for Sylvia and Lauren, it might actually help them in the class they're taking on database. That and as you read through this, where it's not trying to go to that depth of a level, that it might help you get it straight too. But they're going through and setting all of these up, showing you how that's done. And that's what you're going through and doing here in chapter 9 is just how do you design the data? Because quite often you're going to set up programs that use databases because databases are a great way to put stuff out there. Now, you can use the same type design as with databases without actually using a database. Um, as I was mentioning earlier, Access is technically a database, but it's a personal database and very limited. SQL Server is a really good, solid database. MySQL is another one. Oracle is another one. Um, those are big ones. There's a couple of other bigger ones out there and that I can't think of right at the second. MySQL and Oracle are actually both sold by Oracle. MySQL is a free one. SQL Server and Oracle are really expensive. However, students can get MySQL, not MySQL, SQL Server are really expensive. SQL Server and Oracle are really expensive. MySQL is free. Our students can get a full production program of SQL Server through Azure DevTools for Teaching, what used to be Imagine, etc. Um, the Oracle can also, a personal copy of it can get for free. So MySQL is a free one across the line. And Oracle bought it a few years ago and has it. Oracle Company was actually created with their big database, was what their product was for a long time. Oracle is also who makes VirtualBox that some of you use and some other classes from me. I know Alexander's in another class from me using two classes actually using VirtualBox, and it's sold by Oracle also. And that's why I've told students don't call it Oracle because actually when people hear the word Oracle, they think database. even though there's some other things Oracle sells now, like VirtualBox, which can be sold or you can get free, like y'all got it free. MySQL I use SQL Server to teach with because it's a solid one and it's free out there. If it wasn't free, I wouldn't use it. Um, but the database I use on one web page that I do, I use MySQL to do it on there. And they work essentially the same. The SQL for them both, which is structured query language, actually is essentially the same in both of them. The SQL is not a standardized language, but it's pretty well standardized, except for access. All right, any other questions? And they all didn't actually have a question, but I sort of took your comment and ran with it. Okay, I've got all four of you marked down here being here, so I will get that in later. I've still got about 250 miles to get back home. And I've got a 1 o'clock appointment I'll stop for and do this again. I know at least one of you is in that one. And then tomorrow morning, hopefully, I'll be back on campus. Because I should get in. At this point, my GPS says I'll get in at, well, 3:12 p.m. I have to translate time because I just passed into the central time zone. And I'll be in it until I get across the mountain on the Chattanooga side of the mountain. So it's an hour earlier on me than what I'm thinking. So my GPS shows it as that I'll arrive at 2:12 plus 1. It took me a while to figure that one out, but that's telling me actually it'll be 3:12. Well, actually, I won't get in till probably 4 or 5 o'clock. Because I say I've got one more class session to stop and do, and then I'm getting gas here before I pull out, and obviously I'll need a rest stop or two along the way. And that distance, I probably will have to get gas again one more time. So I will let y'all go, and I'll see y'all next Tuesday. We should be fine on the time. I should be from the office. The following week, it will change. So that we'll have to move it to Wednesday again because I've got training all day on that Tuesday on the 9th. But next week we should be on Tuesday at 11 o'clock as normal. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And hopefully this was okay for y'all watching me in the car. If I can get it to